Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's class. This is the seventh class for the semester, and this will be the second to the last class for the semester. So we have one more class for this semester, and today we'll be discussing meaning and definitions. Meaning and definitions. So we have to understand meanings and definitions. You know, the last class we discussed the nature and scope of logic, treating logical signs and symbols. But today we'll be discussing meaning and definitions. You know, meaning cannot stand in isolation of language. Neither does definition stand in isolation of language. So we cannot discuss meaning without discussing language. Language, simply defined, is a system of sign and symbol that stands for something external to the signs and symbol. Language is a system of what? Communication. It's a system that stands for something external to the signs and symbol and facilitates verbal exchange among humans. It facilitates verbal exchange among humans. Language is a mode of communication. So when we want to give a meaning to something, we give meaning to it, or we define what? Through language. But then, you know, like we said, things we give meaning to, how do we get the meaning? You know, John Locke will say that at birth the mind of man is what? A tabula rasa, a clean slate. That means everything we give meaning to are an offshoot of the impressions we have, an offshoot of the things that the impression we have at birth. Meanwhile, we have Chomsky. His argument for potentiality, he said human beings are born with the capacity to learn language. The capacity is developed before complex human experience. If the potential was never there, it would be impossible to learn language. So Chomsky is telling us that we have the potential to learn language, that potential is innate with us. But for someone like John Locke, is telling us that we do not have any innate idea or any innate thing. Everything is an offshoot of what we call impression on our mind, which happens to be what? A blank slate. So what are the functions of language? Very quickly, I don't want this class to take too long. The functions of language, we have the informative function, expressive function, and directive function. Informative function, expressive, and directive function. So language can be used to pass information. You can use it to pass information. For instance, I'm using language to pass information to you now. I'm using it to what? Pass an information to you. Teaching you with what? With language. Language can be used as an expressive function. You can use it to express your feelings. You get my point? So when you ask your boyfriend or your girlfriend out, language is performing what? An expressive function. Or when you say, ouch! I'm hot. All those kinds, your expression. So language is serves as what? An expressive function. Then language can serve as serve the function of direction. You can give directive through language. For instance, you can give command. Don't go. Don't move. Move through that wing. Don't pass this place. So at that point, you are what? You are giving what? Direction. You are giving directive. So now, beyond language is giving meaning. Beyond simply distinction between emotion and direction is giving meaning. So even when you are expressing yourself and you are passing an information or you are giving directive, it is very much important that the person you are communicating with must be able to decode the meaning. If the person can't decode the meaning, then communication can be said to have taken place at any point in time. Communication cannot be said to what? Have taken point. So the idea of meaning could be linguistic in form and extra linguistic. Meaning is linguistic when it is communicated to another person through medium of what? Language. Are you getting my point? When you use language, then what? It is what? Linguistic. But it is extra linguistic when it is not communicated through language. So we can have meanings that are communicated through body signs. For instance, you know, when we are growing up, there are ways our parents look at you, most especially when there is a visitor there and they want to communicate with you. They necessarily do not have to say leave that place or get out of that place, but their body language, their eye signal will pass an information to you that they are passing a message, and what you are able to what, to decode the meaning. And why do we need to decode meaning? Because meaning could be ambiguous in such a way that, okay, for instance, a story you might have is a man that said, please get rid of this person. A king said they should get rid of someone. Getting rid of the person is just for, it might mean two things. It might mean that that person should be killed, or that person should be taken away from his presence at that moment or at that particular moment of time. So the significance of this story is just to let you know that meaning helps to clear ambiguity and vagueness. It helps to clear ambiguity and vagueness in language. You are able to know what the person meant by the linguistic expression. You are able to understand what the person meant by what? The linguistic expression. So now, very quickly, you know, we have what we call the meaning could be connotative, and it what? It should be what? It could be denotative. Now, one easy way of arriving at the meaning of a word is to define the word, what the word means. A word can be defined in terms of intentional or extensional meaning. The intentional stroke connotative meaning of the word consists of the characteristics, qualities, or attributes that the word connotes. For instance, intentional meaning of a skyscraper is found in the characteristics of skyscraper. Now, we can also have what we call the extensional or denotative meaning of a word. It is defined as the member of the class that the words denote. Extensional meaning of president will include Obama, Obasanjo, Putin, and the like. The extensional meaning of car could mean Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, and the like. Now, why do we define concepts? Why do we need to define concept? Why do we need to give meaning to concept? Firstly, let me tell you what definition means when you are saying you are defining a concept. A definition refers to a group of words that is used to give meaning to other words. A definition is referred to a group of words that is used to give meaning to other words. By implication, the definandum must not be present in the defining. The definandum is what you are trying to define, must not be present in the defining, which is the meaning you are giving. For instance, let's say you are asked to define, let me think of something. Let's say you are asked to define, I'm trying to ruminate on something we always do. Let's say you are asked to define existence. You are asked to define existence. You say existence is when someone exists. What does it mean to exist? Are you getting my point? You define so that people can have clarity and understand the concept. Now, what does it mean to exist? You are falling into a problem in which the definandum is in the defining. So most time when we are asked to define something, what we are trying to define is still present in the definition. It should not be so at any point. What you are trying to define should not reflect in your definition. You should use other words to express and to clarify what you are trying to define. So that's why we call it the definandum and what? The defining. So there are 5 purposes of definition. 5 purposes of what? Definition. Why do we define? You define, in other words, to increase your vocabulary. You define to increase your vocabulary. Let's say, for instance, now you have not heard about what we call the definandum before. I've been able to express that definandum is the concept you are about to give meaning to. So now it's part of your vocabulary. Somewhere else, one way or the other, you might want to use that same concept and you've added it to your vocab and you use it personally. So you've acquired a new vocab. Then to remove ambiguity. Ambiguity applies to word that possesses 2 or 3 different meanings. So for instance, you know, I said in one of the classes, when we say bank, we have bank of a river, we have bank where we keep money. So when we define to clear this ambiguity, what does it mean? To reduce vagueness. So it helps to reduce vagueness. Then another one is to give theoretical what explanation. For instance, when we're in the class of nature and scope of logic, you discover that we are defining some terms, and I was showing you some signs and symbols that you can use. So we use that to give theoretical explanation. Then we define so that we can influence others. You give definition to influence others. You know, there's a way you define something and you are able to influence others. You are able to let them see the reality or the beauty of what you just define. You are able to let them see the reality or the beauty of what you just define. Or for instance, you can define to persuade people, so that you said something and you want them to follow you, so you define it in such a way so that they will understand and they will necessarily want to follow you. So definition could help to influence the attitude of people. Now we have types of definition. Quickly. We have what we call stipulative definition. These are definitions that we give to new words. For instance, you know that new words are coming into the dictionary every day, and we keep giving them new meaning. For instance, you know, mama put, okada, danfo are now included in the New English Dictionary. Are you getting it? The latest edition. So okada is now included in the New English Dictionary. So okada is now being referred to an English word. So I can say, I'm going to get an okada. So okada is now an English word. Or I'm going to get a danfo is now an English word. So stipulative definition is giving meaning to new words that are just coming on board. Then we have another type of definition. We call it lexical definition, and this is what we use majorly. Lexical definition. This a type of definition does not arise from arbitrary creation of neology. Rather, it is used to report an already established conventional usage. So at the lexical definition, you are expressing, or you are trying to explain the meaning of the usage of that word. So for instance, I was not the one that gave the original meaning of definandum, but I was able to give you a meaning to it, that the meaning that has been accepted, that is being used to explain that particular concept. That is what? A lexical definition. So, you know, a bachelor is an unmarried man. So when you say bachelor is an unmarried man, that is what? A lexical definition. It has a meaning on its own. So, but we are trying to tell people what it means. They are ignorant of the meaning. It's not part of their vocab. So we are trying to explain the meaning. Then we have precising definition. This applies solely to vague words. When some words are vague, or they are not used in the right context, you use a precisive definition to let them know that this definition is used in this particular context, or this is the exact meaning of it. At that point, it might have a denotative meaning. So it's more precise, trying to tell us that this definition is used precisely for this. Are you getting my point now? So, you know, we have precisive definition to clarify what? Words that are vague. Then we have what we call theoretical definition. This type of definition is common in philosophy and science. When you give meanings to some of your theories, your concepts, your ideas. So you give meanings to them. They are not general theories. They are different from the stipulative definition because they are not general theories that is accepted. They are just theories within your domain. They are what we call this private language. but you give meaning to them. This is what they mean within what? Our domain. So we call them what? Theoretical what? Definition. For instance, you have the Newton relative theory and the rest, substance and the likes. Then we have persuasive definition. At the point of persuasive definition, and we are able to understand when we say language could help to influence people's attitude. For instance, persuasive definition, this definition is proposed as a means of influencing people's attitude. For instance, you can define abortion in a cruel way. You can say abortion is a process of removing an unborn baby from or the removal of an unborn baby, a soul, a living entity from the womb of a woman. You know, it looks cruel. Someone that listens to that definition will conceive abortion to be something that is very bad. But you can also define it in such a way that abortion is a process of removing unformed fetus or an embryo, an unwanted embryo from the host body. At that point, you know, you are trying to let them see as if abortion is something that is light, and they might not conceive it as something that is bad. So persuasion, the way you define concept at times, you know, some of you also do it as students. When you want to define something, you define it in such a way that it suits your taste and pass a meaning that you really want that person to understand and what? And comprehend. I do hope you understand what I mean by what we call the persuasive definition. Then we have what we call the ostensive definition. Ostensive definition is when you define a concept by pointing to them. By pointing to them, you are trying to express yourself by pointing to them. For instance, a red color ball. That's, you are trying to show them the object. You know, we do it majorly in the primary level, the nursery and primary level. A red ball is this. They didn't tell us what red is or what a red ball is, but they are able to allow the children to be able to identify what a red ball is. So that is what we call the ostensive definition. So now, normally, the definition we use majorly are what we call the lexical definition. That is the definition we use majorly. They are called lexical what? Definition. And I'm trying to check your scheme of work if we are on the move. Yeah, okay, good. So lexical definition, like I told you, lexical definition is when you express the meaning of the concept based on the established definition. Now, so lexical definition has rules. We have rules that guides you when you are trying to define. You know, I told you one of the rules is that the definandum should not be in the definite. So the number one rule of lexical definition is a lexical definition must give essential meaning of the word to be defined. It must give what? Essential meaning of the word to be defined. How can you be defining a concept, and when you define that concept, you still need to define the concept you use to define it? You know, it's a problem already. Are you getting it? So why do you define in the first place? Is it not to give clarity? So it must give what? Essential meaning of the words to be defined. Then the second rule is a lexical definition must be grammatically correct. It must be grammatically correct. At this point, you check the grammar. Are they is and go? Are they was and go? So you must check what? If they are correct, the grammatical connections, if they are correct, then a lexical definition must not be circular. A lexical definition must not be circular. So we can't say you are trying to define a car. A car is a motor. Are you getting it? A car is a motor. A car is a vehicle. What is a vehicle? So it must not be circular. It must address that particular concept. It must clarify that particular concept. It must link to that particular concept you are trying to define. So it must not be circular. Are you getting it? Then a lexical definition must not be too broad and too narrow. It must not be too broad. They are not telling you to write a note. They are telling you to divine. They are not telling you to write a short story. They are telling you to what? To divine. So it must not be too broad. They didn't ask you to explain. They say divine. And it must not be too narrow. Too narrow in the sense that the person will not even be, you've narrowed it down that it did not really explain the entire concept. It did not explain the entire concept or what the concept meant. I don't know if you get my point. It must not be too broad and what? Too narrow. Then the fifth rule, I think, let me check your content again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we have 8 rules now. We have 6. The fifth rule is a lexical definition must not be negative where it can be affirmative. A lexical definition must not be negative when it can be affirmative. So, for instance, when you are using persuasive definition, it's quite different from persuasive. Persuasive definition, you know that word can be affirmative, but just to be able to persuade them to see to let them see as if it is bad, you define it in such a negative way. So it must not be negative when it could be affirmative. So if it could be affirmative, you define it in an affirmative way. You define it in a negative way if and only if the concept itself is negative. If and only if the concept itself is negative. Then rule 6, a lexical definition must not express ambiguity. It must not express ambiguity. You know what ambiguity is? The bank of a river, the bank you store money. It must not express ambiguity. It must be clear enough. It must be clear enough. It must not express ambiguity. Then a lexical definition must avoid emotional terminology. You don't put your emotion. So what is abortion? You don't put your emotion in defining abortion. So abortion is killing of a baby. That is not the meaning of abortion. That is emotional, because you've conceived abortion to be bad. But someone who has a baby, you know, we discussed it during the class of ethical dilemma. Someone who has a baby and giving birth to the baby might cause the baby more harm, might go ahead to commit abortion. But because you've seen abortion, maybe based on religious belief and the rest, you conceive abortion to be something that is bad and terrible. You say abortion is killing. It must not be emotional. Lexical definition should not what? Be emotional. Then the last one, a lexical definition must indicate the context to which a word applies. It must indicate the context to which a word applies. You know that definitions could be connotative, like I said earlier, and it could be what? Denotative. So it must be able to express the context in which you are using it. You know, you can define something in philosophy, and in science it will represent something different. In education it will represent something different. So it must what? Express the context in which you are using it. So that is all we have to say about definitions and meaning. I do hope you understand and you can comprehend this. This is the 7th class of the semester. We have just one more class left. So do enjoy your day. If you have any question, ask me on the group. Subscribe, watch all the YouTube videos. My number is always right with you, 0703958720. So do have a great day. I'm your tutor Oluwatobi David Eson. Enjoy the rest of your day. And if you are watching this video at night, enjoy the rest of your sleep. Take care.